And we're going to turn and listen in to the business on the floor and the swearing in of the latest member of Congress.
Overdue justice and accountability for hundreds of victims abused by rich and powerful men. She is a smart, principled fighter through and through, Mr. Speaker. It is my honor to welcome and introduce to this chamber Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva.
Muchas gracias. Good job. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Gracias. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Muchas gracias. Thank you so much. Thank you to my colleague and friend, Congressman Stanton, for that kind introduction, and to the entire Democratic delegation from Arizona and the delegation that stood here with me that has supported me throughout this process. I rise today the proud granddaughter of a bracero, a hardworking Mexican immigrant who came to this country for a better life. And I stand as the proud daughter of a U.S. congressman, a man who spent his entire life fighting for justice, equity, and dignity for the most vulnerable. Yeah. From working as a vaquero to serving in Congress in just a single generation, that is the promise of this country. That is the America I want to raise my three beautiful children in, Adelina, Raul, and Joaquin. Stand up, baby. Look at them. They, along with my amazing husband, Sol, and my wonderful mama, Ramona, are here with me today. Muchas gracias por su apoyo y tu amor. And thank you to la gente of Southern Arizona for making history, electing me the first Latina, the first Chicana from Arizona to ever go to Congress. Este momento es histórico para nuestra comunidad. Es un honor ser la primera latina en representar a Arizona en el Congreso, y les aseguro que aunque soy la primera, no será la última. And while we celebrate this moment today, our American promise is under serious threat. Basic freedoms are under attack. Healthcare premiums are skyrocketing. Babies are being ripped away from their parents by masked agents. We can and must do better. What is most concerning is not what this administration has done, but what the majority in this body has failed to do. Hold Trump accountable as a co-equal branch of government that we are. It has been 50 days since the people of Arizona's 7th Congressional District elected me to represent them. 50 days that over 800,000 Arizonans have been left without access to the basic services that every constituent deserves. This is an abuse of power. One individual should not be able to unilaterally obstruct the swearing in of a duly elected member of Congress for political reasons. Our democracy only works when everyone has a voice. This includes the millions of people across the country who have experienced violence and exploitation, including Liz Stein and Jessica Michaels, both survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's abuse. They are here in the gallery with us this evening. Thank you for being here. Just this morning, House Democrats released more emails showing that Trump knew more about Epstein's abuses than he previously acknowledged. It's past time for Congress to restore its role as a check and balance on this administration and fight for we, the American people. We need to fight for our immigrant communities and veterans. We need to stand up for our public schools, children, and educators. We need to respect tribal sovereignty in our environment. We need to stand up for LGBTQ+ rights, because that's what the American people expect us to do. Fight for them. That is why I will sign the discharge petition right now to release the Epstein files. Justice cannot wait another day. Adelante, mi gente. Muchas gracias. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Democrats from the House Oversight Committee released a slew of emails, and they are about as significant as anything we've seen yet, tying Donald Trump to Jeffrey Epstein in a far more significant way than we've ever heard to this point.
Yeah, and these emails are conversations between Jeffrey Epstein and author Michael Wolff, as well as Ghislaine Maxwell.
So let's start with 2015, just before the Republican debates on CNN. Michael Wolff, the author, told Jeffrey Epstein that he was concerned that they might
He had heard, actually, that
CNN would ask questions about Epstein to Donald Trump.
Right, would ask Donald Trump about his relationship with Epstein, and Epstein responds to Michael Wolff's bringing that up, and Epstein says, if we could craft an answer, what should it be?
Now listen to this.
Which, by the way, we should say, makes it clear that Epstein is saying, if I could get information to Trump on how to respond to that question, what should it be?
Well, if it were simply, if the truth was simply all he knew, he just knew and socialized with Epstein, you wouldn't be concerned about crafting an answer. Right. You craft an answer when there are things you don't want to say or shade or avoid. Now listen to this. Wolff sends back to Donald Trump this. This is a quote.
No, Wolff sends back
to Epstein, excuse me. Wolff sends back to Epstein. This is a quote. I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the house, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. Then he goes on to say this. If it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. That is way more.
The save him part is
Save him. Save him from what? That's the question. If it's just they socialized, you're not saving him from anything.
Right.
And then it gets into some of the victims. So,
right. Because this is 2019, a January 2019 email. Epstein, again talking to Michael Wolff, says that, there's this whole thing. Donald Trump has said that he kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago and Ghislaine because they were poaching young women from his spa. So Epstein says to Michael Wolff, Trump said he asked me to resign. Never a member, ever. Of course he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop.
And if you have any question about whether Ghislaine knew about the girls and whether Trump was involved with the girls, listen to this. This is an email that goes back to April of 2011. This is Epstein dropping Trump's name to Maxwell in an email. Here's what he said, quote, "I want you to realize that dog that hasn't barked is Trump." And then the name of the victim is redacted. We know now it's Virginia Giuffre.
That's what the White House is saying. It's Virginia Giuffre, right?
She said that Virginia spent hours at my house, Epstein's house, with him, Donald Trump. He has never once been mentioned, police chief, etc. I'm 75% there.
I don't know what that means. I don't know.
The 75% there. But he's saying that Virginia spent time with Donald Trump, not at Mar-a-Lago, but at Epstein's house.
Now, the White House has responded to these emails and said, Virginia, and this is true, Virginia Giuffre said that she had spent time with President Trump, but always said that he was nothing but kind and didn't suggest that there was anything criminal that he did.
Right. But what's interesting is the email that I just read that Epstein sent Ghislaine about the dog hasn't barked, the dog that hasn't barked is Trump. Ghislaine responds, "I have been thinking about that."
So that's really, really interesting.
Yes.
Because clearly she's saying in that email, I have been thinking about that. I know what you just said to me about him spending time with Virginia at your house. I know about that. Why that's interesting is because Ghislaine Maxwell earlier this year had a very now infamous meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, where she said that she knew nothing about President Trump spending time with anyone who was underage. And right after she made that statement, she was transferred to this minimum security prison camp where she is now. So she told the Deputy Attorney General she didn't know anything about it, yet in this email she is saying, I've been thinking about that.
Since 2011.
Right.
Since 2011.
That was in 2011.
So, look, these emails, which are not really part of the Justice, we don't know. They may be part of the Justice Department file, we don't know, because...
No, so the House Oversight Committee said that these were received by subpoena. They subpoenaed the Epstein estate after his death in 2019.
Now, we don't know whether these are part of the Justice Department file or not, but that file is now headed for release, I think, with the swearing in of the Arizona Congresswoman today.
Yeah.
And once that happens, the file is going to be released. But the White House is calling BS on all of this. They're saying that this is just taking
a campaign by the Dems and that
taking away from Trump's historic accomplishments. But there is something here that why in 2015, ahead of the debate, is Epstein trying to craft a statement?
He uses the word craft.
Craft a statement essentially about Epstein's relationship with Trump.
Right.
That is really interesting, to be continued.
National Affairs correspondent Jeff Zeleny, he is at the White House for us. Jeff, good to see you. Sources telling CNN that top administration officials met today in the Situation Room about the House vote. What does that tell us? What are we learning?
Well, Casey, look, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said that in the briefing today, confirming our CNN reporting that Lauren Boebert, of course, a single member of Congress, not a leadership member, not on any key committees, had that meeting in the Situation Room with the Attorney General of the United States, with the Deputy Attorney General, with the FBI Director. And of course, Lauren Boebert is one of the Republicans who has said she would cross over and sign that discharge petition, which would allow the House to go forward and vote on releasing the Department of Justice Epstein files. Lauren Boebert has just told our colleagues on Capitol Hill that she has no plans of changing her pledge to vote for that. But that extraordinary meeting here at the White House just underscores the stakes of all of this. The White House sought to explain the meeting in the Situation Room earlier today like this.
Whatever you guys think. It is not a coincidence that the Democrats leaked these emails to the fake news this morning ahead of Republicans reopening the government.
Why are White House officials then meeting with Representative Boebert in an effort to try and get her to not sign this petition calling for the release of the files?
Doesn't it show transparency that members of the Trump administration are willing to brief members of Congress whenever they please? Doesn't that show our level of transparency?
So an extraordinary briefing by any measure. I cannot recall a time where effectively a rank and file member of Congress would have such a high level briefing in the Situation Room of all things. But never mind that. President Trump also pushing back in a very significant way on Truth Social throughout the day about the release of the Epstein files. I'll read you just a flavor of some of what is on his mind, Casey. The president writes this: the Democrats, he says, are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown and so many other subjects. Only a very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. Any Republicans involved should be focused only on opening up our country. However, when the new member from Arizona is sworn in, the discharge petition is scheduled to happen sometime after that, and then the shutdown vote happens later this evening. But the bottom line to all of this is the whole reason the House of Representatives has been away for nearly 2 months. It is to effectively try and end the whole Epstein conversation. Well, that is right back happening this afternoon in ways the White House could not have anticipated it. So yes, they were scrambling a bit on this. But again, we should point out, even though the president's name has been mentioned several times in these in very interesting ways, still no evidence of any wrongdoing by him. But a question is, was he aware of any wrongdoing by Jeffrey Epstein? And that is less clear. Casey?
A remarkable set of facts at hand. Jeff Zeleny, thanks very much for that reporting. All right, our panel is here. CNN legal analyst Elliot Williams, CNN political commentator, Republican strategist and pollster Kristen Soltis Anderson, CNN political commentator Sochi Hinojosa, and CNN senior political commentator, former Trump campaign advisor David Urban. We're also joined by Donald Trump's former attorney, Bill Brennan. Thank you all for being here on what is quite a newsy day. And David Urban, you're laughing to yourself. Yeah. This is obviously part of this release from the House Oversight Democrats here. I thought it was noteworthy that Caroline Leavitt used the word pedophile to describe Jeffrey Epstein. In the past, we've not heard White House officials use that word in the context of President Trump. How do you think the White House should be handling it? What does it tell you that they felt like they needed to meet in the Situation Room to try to prevent a vote for more of this to come out?
Yeah, look, the Situation Room is obviously, they're meeting there because probably went phones away and maybe talking about some very sensitive information regarding victims and other things. I mean, who knows? It's part of it may be classified. I'm not quite sure what they're discussing. But look, I've been pretty steadfast in my position on this from the get-go. Release everything, right? I don't understand why during the Biden administration, Democrats weren't so excited about releasing all these Epstein files when Joe Biden was president for 4 years. We could have had this. And we could have had a hearing. What I think, again, we should have the line attorneys in the Southern District of Miami, as well as Alex Acosta, who was the prosecutor in this case, that gave Jeffrey Epstein a lighter sentence. We should have a hearing. We want to know what's going on? Let's bring those people forward and hear from them. I'm not so concerned about what's in the files. I'm not sure there's anything in the files. But I'd like to know why they gave him a much, much softer deal than he would have gotten otherwise. And I'm much more concerned about why the Democrats for the past 4-6 years haven't said peep about it until today. Just it's a little too right, but I'm for total transparency. Let's get it out there. It's the best. Sunshine's the best disinfectant.
Degree, Casey. Well, to a large degree, Casey, I agree with David Urban. If there was a smoking gun, they would have released it. The thing that was released today was an alleged email exchange between a convicted felon, man who died in prison for being charged with heinous crimes, and a alleged journalist who, instead of just reporting on what he purportedly received, was giving strategy advice on how to use it. Maybe we can use it for political capital. Maybe we can put it in our back pocket. You know, Casey, I've been on your show many times, and you've never given me any talking points or strategy advice. You ask me questions, and I answer them. So I think that if there was a smoking gun, we would have heard it. And I agree with David to release it all. Let's see what's in there. You know, if there's something bad, which I'll be shocked, frankly, but it is or it isn't. So release it all.
You're, of course, referring to Michael Wolff, who journalist, author, who was involved in these exchanges with Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein that we saw today. Elliot Williams,
yes.
There were some redactions in the documents that Democrats put out. Then Republicans released the redacted names. And they claim that it was because this victim, Virginia Giuffre, has publicly said she never witnessed any wrongdoing by President Trump. Obviously, the details here are important, but the big picture is also critical. I think I just keep coming back to this basic question of why won't they just put out all the files?
We have a stunning degree of unanimity on this conversation today because we're all in agreement that this stuff should have been out there. Let's be clear. This is 100% a crisis of Pam Bondi and Donald Trump's making. They let this mess happen. Had 6 months ago, they simply released the document, said, number one, this is what is in our possession that we are allowed to make public. Number two, this is the material in our possession that we are not allowed to make public because the law does not allow it. And number three, this is what Donald Trump knows. Some of it might be a little bit embarrassing, but number one, he thinks Jeffrey Epstein is a creep, but he did not engage in any wrongdoing. And here's what he knew. If they'd just done that 6 months ago, they wouldn't be here dealing with this mess. And Pam Bondi standing at the Oval Office and suggesting that she had binders of information that she was passing out and was set to release the whole file only made this situation worse. They screwed up.
I wonder if this now further shades the conversation that Ghislaine Maxwell had with Todd Blanche before she was transferred to a Club Fed style prison where she's treated much better than the high security prison she was in before, the one that the type of people convicted of the type of crimes that she was convicted for usually stay in, the ones that are not transferred to the nicer facilities, obviously nicer being relative. Here's what Ghislaine Maxwell said to Todd Blanche. I think they were, regarding Donald Trump, I think they were friendly like people are in social settings. I don't think they were close friends, or I certainly never witnessed the president in any of, I don't recall ever seeing him in his house, for instance. I actually never saw the president in any type of massage setting. I never witnessed the president in any inappropriate setting in any way. The president was never inappropriate with anybody. Again, this is what she told Blanche in July of this year. The emails between her and Epstein from 2011 suggest something different. Seem to, at least.
Yeah, that's correct. And maybe she carefully worded that. She wasn't in the room, perhaps, when some of this was going on. But she certainly, look, she knows everything that happened. She is a very smart, shrewd woman, and she has the goods. I mean, she really does know what happened. So I think it's a little disingenuous of her to play as though she's still saying she didn't even know Epstein was, abusing young girls or young women. So her whole testimony with Blanche was really, in some ways, suspect from the very start.
I guess there are two questions here, and Ken kind of touched on this. There's one, did Donald Trump himself do anything inappropriate? Was he involved with any of the women? And we haven't, and you correct me if I'm wrong, there has not yet been a woman saying that happened to her with the president. Virginia Giuffre never said that. And then the second question is, did he know about it, though? Was he aware of what was happening on that island, on those planes, what Jeffrey Epstein was doing with Ghislaine Maxwell? And has he not been truthful about that awareness since this exploded into the public domain? Julie.
Well, look, there was one woman, in fairness, there was one woman that filed a lawsuit in 2016 claiming that when she was 13 years old that she was raped by both Trump and Epstein. That there was never any evidence presented in it, and the woman just quietly went away, disappeared just days before the election. So we can't, but it was a court document. It was a court lawsuit that was filed. So there's been that out there in the domain, but no, there hasn't been any credible evidence presented that Trump was involved.
But what about what he knew and when?
I'm sorry, say that again?
What about what he knew about it? I mean, I guess that is a more relevant question here today.
Well, I think that what these emails are showing, if nothing else, that he was part of Epstein's world very closely. The emails indicate that he was at Epstein's home. The emails seem to indicate that, that he might even have damaging information about Trump. I mean, there's one email from the author Michael Wolff, which was written just before the election, where Wolff is sort of coaxing Epstein to tell the public what he knows because it would finish him, was the words that Wolff used. Now, Epstein was a fabulist. We know that he exaggerated a lot of things. So just because these are in these, some of this damaging information are in these emails doesn't make it true.
Let me just read that email. This is from Jeffrey Epstein again to the author Michael Wolff. This is from December 15th, 2015. So it's 11 months, 11 months before the election. He says, I hear CNN planning to ask Trump tonight about his relationship with you, either on air or in a scrum afterwards. This is about a debate. And then Michael Wolff says, if we were able to craft an answer for him, Michael Wolff said that. And then Jeffrey Epstein says this: if we were able to craft an answer for him, what do you think it should be? And then Michael Wolff responds with, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you, or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is about to be outlawed in a Trump regime. Julie, remind me exactly what was happening with Jeffrey Epstein in this moment. Was he getting renewed scrutiny? Was he about to be arrested again?
Well, this was when the lawsuits were also coming out against him and Trump. Remember, I just mentioned that woman who sort of went by the name Jane Doe and Katie Johnson. So there was this lawsuit, as I said, that was in the news at the time. So, and the questions were just sort of swirling around him just because of the Access Hollywood tape and the Stormy Daniels event. So there were a lot of questions right around this time about, who he was involved with and what kind of sexual, accusations were being made at the time.
Yeah, just to be fair, this is from 2015. The Access Hollywood tape didn't come out until...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, a little bit later. But yeah, there were still at the time questions about Donald Trump and his propriety. I mean, they had been dogging him for years. So they were definitely coming up during the campaign in those early days. There was the Megyn Kelly dust up just a couple months earlier. So it was definitely out there, those questions.
Well, and also I just want to add the other one from Michael Wolff, not the one you read. There's another one that he wrote that's similar, that uses the word, it was right around this time where he uses the word, this could really finish Trump. So there's another email that wasn't part of the original 3 that were released where he is talking about this around the time of the election.
That's interesting. All right, let's bring in Tara Palmieri, author of The Red Letter on Substack, investigative and political journalist as well. Tara, so the president just posted this on True Social. He says the Democrats are trying to bring up the Jeffrey Epstein hoax again because they'll do anything at all to deflect on how badly they've done on the shutdown and so many other subjects. Only a very bad or stupid Republican would fall into that trap. The Democrats cost our country $1.5 trillion with their recent antics of viciously closing our country, while at the same time putting many at risk, and they should pay a fair price. There should be no deflections to Epstein or anything else, and any Republicans involved should focus only on opening up our country and fixing the massive damage caused by the Democrats. How worried is the White House? How worried is the president about this Epstein stuff, these emails, and what could come?
Yeah, well, we know that when he says there's nothing going on there, that there are problems. And just last night, even before all of these emails leaked out, I was hearing that House members were talking about the fact that they could not, possibly vote nay on this one once the bill was actually on the floor. So there were already Republican members starting to break ranks. And I think these emails just apply more pressure, and you can see a really desperate White House that is responding that way. I mean, the New York Times is reporting that he's calling Lauren Boebert, he's calling Nancy Mace, who is running for governor in South Carolina, and would need his endorsement to clear in the primary. But he is working every angle he can to try to get them to remove their names from the discharge petition so that the bill won't come to the floor. Because once it's on the floor, it's going to be really, really hard for these members not to vote for it. And he's in a really tough spot. And I think this whole idea of flood the zone, just dump all of the emails right now, get all the journalists, in a tizzy looking through all of it. It reeks of desperation, frankly.
What about the reaction among Donald Trump's base? They had been so loud in a demand for the Epstein files, to know who knew what, to hold those accountable. And it seems like some of that died off over the summer during the shutdown. Where are they today?
Yeah, I think that they were following him. I mean, his believers tend to trust him when he says there's nothing there, it's a hoax. Where are they today? I think that there is universal support for releasing the files. If there's nothing there, then show it. There's just so much mystery around it, too. And for so long, he said that it's a cabal of elitist Democrats. So they want to see that, too. I think that there is bipartisan desire for justice in this story, despite what he says. I just think that you're not hearing it from the loudest voices online anymore on the right, because they now work in his administration. They're Kash Patel, Pam Bondi.
Yeah. I wonder where do they think the threat is coming, the White House? What do they think might happen if Donald Trump is further implicated?
I think it obviously weakens his presidency. I mean, he's only got, another year until the midterm elections when he will truly be a lame duck president. But this is really damaging. The idea that the president is that closely associated with a pedophile ring. I mean, this is, you have to think the UK ambassador to the US had to step down for much less. I mean, this is really something to see how closely associated it is in all of his emails. Sorry about that.
Don't worry about it.
Someone who's trying to make it on TV. And so, this is just, I think it's political. It's kryptonite. I don't know how anyone can survive this, especially if the Epstein files reveal an even closer association. And it's a drip, 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 Katie. Like, it's the worst way to handle a story. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more there. There really is. Even Virginia Giuffre's book, she didn't even share all of it, all of the people that she was, trafficked to. It was 36 men. There's so many more. And that means that her files, her depositions, that men paid a lot of money to lawyers to try to redact their names. If those files are actually released unredacted, I mean, it will open up a whole new can of worms.
Joining us now, former host of MSNBC's Hardball, Chris Matthews. Yay, former Ohio.
Joining us now, Democratic Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett of Texas, a key member of the House Oversight Committee and the House Judiciary Committee as well. Congresswoman, thanks so much for joining us. What stands out to you from these emails that were publicly released by the committee today?
Yeah, so number one, it is clear that he knew what was going on, which I think that he's kind of alluded to that at some point in time, because the president said that he was trying to kick Ghislaine out of Mar-a-Lago because it seems like that's where girls were being recruited from based on information that we have. But more importantly is that he was having conversation, he being Jeffrey Epstein, with Michael Wolff, who is writing this book or trying to put together this book. And in real time, as Trump is running for his first presidential run, we hear or we see that he made it clear that he believes that he has leverage over Trump. And he said that a Trump regime would basically open up, this is me paraphrasing, this is not exactly what he said, but basically it'd be a free-for-all. And as we've seen, especially in this second term, it's been a free-for-all where Trump has absolutely pardoned some folk that we know are terrible, and we are waiting on him to pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. I think that that's coming up soon, too.
Yeah, an important point indeed. Congresswoman, let's take a closer look at that email from Epstein where he writes to the author, Michael Wolff, saying this, and it's a direct quote, redacted victim, the name was redacted. Mar-a-Lago, Trump said he asked me to resign, never a member ever. Of course, he knew about the girls as he asked Ghislaine to stop. Obviously, we don't have the full context here, but I'm curious, how do you read this specific email and what it means?
Yeah, I think that it is showing that he was well aware and he was trying to cover his tracks at that point in time. And I think that that's what you saw from Jeffrey. Obviously, it'd be better if we could talk to Jeffrey today, but it was very interesting that ultimately Jeffrey Epstein died sitting in prison during Trump's administration.
We had on Representative Marlon Stutzman earlier. He's a Republican, and he tried to make the case that President Trump is the most investigated person in the world, and he has not been accused of any criminal wrongdoing here. What do you make of that?
Listen, they will do and say anything to cover themselves. You know, I will admit that Donald Trump has been investigated more than the normal, but he just happens to be more corrupt and more criminal than any other president than we've had. I will point out he is the only president who has been convicted of 34 felony convictions that we've ever had in the Oval Office. So while we don't know exactly what crimes he may or may not have committed, just think of it this way. If you know that you didn't do anything, then why is it that you would be twisting members of your own party's arms, trying to get them not to release it? This would be exonerating. If you know that you are free and clear, then why not say, you know what, release the files? In fact, he campaigned on releasing the files because he didn't realize that anything that he was involved in whatsoever was involved in the files. But let me tell you something. Another thing that was said in that other email that he had with Michael Wolff was he was talking about if he wants to basically play hardball, we will make mention of the fact that he really has been on the plane, and I don't remember if it mentioned the island.
Let's actually put that email up just so our viewers can fully understand what it says. I just hope the control room can put this email up. It says, I think you should let him hang himself, and this is in response to a question of whether CNN would plan to ask Trump in a town hall about the relationship with Epstein. Epstein said, how do we craft an answer for him? And Michael Wolff says in this email, I think you should let him hang himself. If he says he hasn't been on the plane or to the House, then that gives you a valuable PR and political currency. You can hang him in a way that potentially generates a positive benefit for you. Or if it really looks like he could win, you could save him, generating a debt. Of course, it is possible that when asked, he'll say Jeffrey is a great guy and has gotten a raw deal and is a victim of political correctness, which is to be outlawed in a Trump regime.
Yes.
That's the full email.
Yes. That is clear that Jeffrey Epstein had something to hang over his head. Why else or how else could you have a debt that you are able to? Now, exactly what it was, who knows, right? And that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. But the fact that Trump does not want these files to be out, to me, says that he has more to hide than him actually being able to exonerate himself.
And then the other email talking about that we used initially, I'm just trying to find that email so I can be really precise here, but it talks about how Epstein is emailing Maxwell saying that Trump was with a victim at his house for several hours. This is an email from April 2nd, 2011. Republicans were saying that that victim is Virginia Giuffre. As you know, she died by suicide. She's been very outspoken. Jeffrey Epstein. Here's the email right here on your screen. She wrote a book, as you know, and she did not accuse him of any wrongdoing. What do you make of that, and can you confirm that?
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's redacted who the victim is, so I won't necessarily take the Republicans' word on who it is that's redacted. And I don't know why they would necessarily redact someone's name who is deceased at this point.
The Democrats did that, though. The Democrats redacted.
No. I understand, but I'm just saying, like, our biggest concern is to actually make sure that we are protecting victims. And obviously, she wrote a book. She told her truth. Whether or not she told everything, who knows? Again, another person that we can't talk to because we have yet another side around this. So I think that that's actually one of the things that we should talk about, is that the president has tried to call this all a hoax. I don't think you have this many people dying around a hoax. I don't think you have somebody trying to hide files around a hoax. We know that there's something there. We know that his own attorney general had to admit that he is in the files, but they are trying to hide stuff. The only reason that we have these emails is because we were able to get them from the estate. Not because the Department of Justice was releasing information, not because Kash Patel was releasing information, even though they've had subpoenas from the Oversight Committee for some time. Kash Patel continues to hold back information. So I thank God that there is somebody that still respects the law and still respects subpoenas in this country, but it's not the people that are in power to do it, the people that actually conducted the investigation. Imagine what we may discover if we got the investigatory information versus getting something from an estate.
Well, but we should also note that the head of the Oversight Committee is a Republican. It's Republican. The chairman is James Comer, and he is the one who is issuing these subpoenas.
Well, let's be clear about this.
Okay.
This is not something that he wanted to do. This was a subcommittee, remember? It has been the Speaker of the House who has consistently tried to avoid this by shutting down the House. So what the Speaker did is he sent us out on an early recess. But before we left, it was a subcommittee of the Oversight Committee that actually did the motion for the subpoenas, and the Democrats kept pushing, and some Republicans actually joined with the Democrats. This was not led by James Comer.
Like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie Taylor Greene, I don't know if she's on that subcommittee.
Okay.
But Nancy Mace is on that subcommittee for sure. She's actually the chair of that subcommittee. This subcommittee, the ranking member is Summer Lee. So it was that subcommittee. So this was actually the tail wagging the dog. I just want to be clear about that. And ultimately, the chairman had a vote that was bipartisan, that was the majority, and he had to do it. But whether or not they have been like slow rolling this, there's no question about the fact that they have.
And you have had Marjorie Taylor Greene, I believe Thomas Massey. It's been some Republicans who want the full floor vote on this.
Yeah, we've got 4. 4 out of the 219 Republicans, yes, in the House. The rest of them seem to be okay with being complicit with protecting pedophiles.
You know, it's interesting. A CNN poll from last July showed that 50% of Americans were feeling dissatisfied about the amount of information released on the Epstein case. Did that have any influence at all on your decision to make these emails public today?
No, I mean, ultimately what's happened is, obviously, again, we've not been getting anything from the DOJ. Instead, it's been the estate of Epstein. And so as they've been turning things over, it takes staff time to review those documents and things like that to make sure that we've got something, number one, of value to the public. There's still additional information. I want to be clear. We got way more than 3 emails. But in their cursory review, they were able to say, okay, here are 3 emails that we think are of value. We do anticipate that there will be more that they will find that will be of value. They will go through the redaction process. They will also consult with the Republicans before we release anything. So it takes a little bit of a process. But I will say, again, that the estate seemingly has been more participatory than our own Department of Justice, who we actually oversee.
So where do you think all of this is heading?
Good question. I don't know, but hopefully it will start with the swearing in of Adelita Grijalva, as they have been avoiding that. Again, the House was shut down over that. I'm sure that the president has been making calls trying to get one of the 4 Republicans that did sign on to the discharge petition. I'm sure he is begging and threatening to get them to pull their names off of there. We know that they don't want to vote. We know that they called us in just for one day to work after we've been out since September. Again, we could be doing additional work. Even if this continuing resolution passes, we should be passing our appropriations bills. That's all the continuing resolution is for, it is in the meantime. But instead, it seems like they want to continue to be evasive so that they can slow walk this subpoena actually coming down.
All right, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, great to see you here in the situation, and thank you for your time.
Absolutely.
Publicly and continue to talk about this, like, help us out. You've only released 1% of the documents, so I think it's quite shameful. I mean, she doesn't deserve to be playing with puppies in prison and getting chef meals basically prepared for her and sent to her dorm. That's That's not what we should be doing to a convicted sex trafficking offender. I can tell you that. She was an active participant and physically abused many of these survivors, including my sister.
I think if King Charles can strip Andrew of the prince title over just affiliations, over leaked emails, why is our president not definitively ruling out a convicted sex trafficker of minors, of children? Why is our president not standing up boldly and saying, I'm sorry, but no, this is the line in the sand. This is not a party issue. This is a human issue that every single person can agree on. There is no gray area here, and there is nothing that she could offer. There's no truths that she will tell that should allow her any peace for the rest of her life.
The heinous things that they went through. I want to see our own government do that. They're safe keeping these documents in this little, I'll call it a Pandora box that needs to be released. It's shameful that the survivors have to continue to bear this, and we need our government to help us. Please help us carry this burden forward so that we can hold these people to account. I have faith. I still have faith that they can do it.
I've heard similar reports. I've also heard, and these are just, I can't confirm them either, reports that someone did complain about this preferential treatment and was promptly transferred to a higher security prison. I don't know if that's true, but that is what's being reported.
Continue to bear this, and we need our government to help us. Please help us.
Quite dangerous for survivors. Liz Stein, who I know you've interviewed, said, as survivors, justice is the one measure of truth we have left. Ghislaine Maxwell was tried, convicted, and sentenced in a court of law, and her sentence should be upheld like anyone else's. So not happy. They're not happy, and they're very concerned.
We do not want this to happen. I beg President Trump not to do anything that she's requesting. I'm not surprised she's trying to get out because she still has a lot of power and she still has a lot of secrets. So I'm not quite sure how much weight that holds.
Apart from Virginia, you say another friend of yours was forced to have sex with Andrew?
Nothing happened to me. I just had a girlfriend during those years that she came to me really upset and said that Jeffrey had made her go into a room and have sex with someone that I thought was the prince. So that's the reason why I started speaking out, because of what I saw on the island, Virginia, and also what my friend told me.
And we asked Andrew Mountbatten Windsor for a response. We haven't heard back. He has previously denied all wrongdoing. Ghislaine Maxwell is reportedly planning to formally ask Donald Trump to cut her 20-year prison sentence for child sex trafficking, according to documents obtained by Democrats on the U.S. House Judiciary Committee. Maxwell helped paedophile Jeffrey Epstein sexually abuse young girls. She was friends with Andrew Windsor. He used to be a prince, as you know, and it was she who introduced Andrew to Epstein. That news comes just hours after a deal was struck that means the shutdown of the US government, which has dragged on for over a month, could soon be nearing an end, potentially bringing with it the release of the so-called Epstein files. I've been speaking to a survivor of Epstein, Lisa Phillips, and asked for her reaction about that reported Ghislaine Maxwell request.
Speaking on behalf of survivors, so many of my survivor sisters that were affected deeply by this woman, we do not want this to happen. I beg President Trump not to do anything that she's requesting. She's a convicted felon, and unfortunately, she's the only one serving time right now. There's many other people that haven't been held accountable, but she is serving
time, and she needs to be held accountable for what she's done.
She was sentenced to 20 years in prison for helping Epstein sexually abuse young girls for child sex trafficking charges. She has tried to get her appeal heard by the US Supreme Court. That hasn't happened. Why does she keep trying, do you think?
Well, I believe she keeps trying because she has still the power to affect a lot of people that are in power, and that could really make what she wants come true for her. I still feel like she's capable of doing that, unfortunately. That's just kind of what wealth and power buys you. She doesn't go to the same prison as everybody else. And from what I've been hearing, she's been petting dogs and hanging out in the fresh air and having tea parties. And it's really infuriating to a lot of us survivors to hear that.
That's interesting that you say you've been hearing that, because it is also reported that she has written an email to a relative obtained by NBC News that now she's been moved to a minimum security prison after having 2 meetings with the Deputy Attorney General. She is said to have written, "I feel like I've dropped through Alice in Wonderland's looking glass. I'm much happier here and more importantly safe."
Wow, I mean, she's so happy there. That's really great, but I've spent a lot of time with her victims, and they have had a lifetime of heartache, and they haven't had so many happy moments when they reflect back on what she has done to them. So we're still standing our ground and trying to do whatever we can to make sure that she stays where she is and she doesn't get all these perks.
How does it make you feel that she is reportedly getting these perks and that she's trying to get out before the 20 years is up?
I'm not surprised she's trying to get out, because she still has a lot of power and she still has a lot of secrets. So I'm not quite sure how much weight that holds, but from the survivor standpoint of knowing hundreds of girls that were affected by her, it's just something that we're going to keep fighting for, to make sure that President Trump doesn't give her what she's asking for.
You were 21 when you met Epstein, and you say you were sexually assaulted by him. It was only after his death in 2019 and when you met other survivors that you started to realize what he had done to you. Is that how it happened for you?
Well, when it comes to serial predators, when they groom and manipulate and abuse hundreds of people, hundreds of victims, you don't really understand what's happening to you, because it's very subtle, the grooming process, and you don't understand why someone's being really nice and giving and then someone's also abusing. There has to be good with the bad. And a lot of times you fall into a bit of a Stockholm syndrome. A lot of us survivors have talked about the fact that Jeffrey did wonderful things for us or our families, and that's kind of the way that you don't understand it when you're younger, until you start speaking out and talking to other survivors from the same predator. Then you start to understand, my goodness, it wasn't just myself. It wasn't just me. This wasn't just happening to me. It was happening to you and you and you as well. And that just, it's kind of sickening. So there is a learning process when it comes to how these predators groom.
Since you last spoke to Newsnight, Andrew has been stripped of the title Prince, and that was a call actually on our program from Virginia Giuffre's family. He is now known as Andrew Windsor. He's also been summoned to appear before the Oversight Committee in the US. You have previously met him. Can you tell our audience about that?
Well, the reason why I spoke out in 2019 and 2020 is because Virginia Giuffre spoke out about this person, and I had seen him on the island when I was first brought there in 2000. And so I just wanted to support her. I mean, naively, when I started speaking out, that's all I wanted to do, was just support her, because I believed her. And I had some experiences back then that supported what she was saying. Her accusations, I believed, were true. So my story started in 2019, basically with Prince Andrew at that time, and just wanting to support the survivors and speaking out against him. So it's been 6 years that it's taken for him to be stripped of that title. We're all very happy for that. I mean, it's not complete justice yet, but that definitely is a life-changing thing for him, and it's the first step in the right direction.
Would you urge him to appear before the U.S. Oversight Committee?
Oh, yes. I think that'll be very revealing.
Did Virginia Giuffre ever talk to you back then about what she said had happened to her with Andrew?
After Virginia spoke out, I contacted her, and I wanted to speak to her and tried to figure out if our dates lined up, because I wasn't sure. I remember there was a very young blonde girl in the pool with an older gentleman, and I was introduced to that man later on as the prince. So I was just like, I want to, be there for you. I remember seeing you on the island. Was that you? And so we started talking about the dates and the flight logs and just seeing if we were there at the same time. And I spoke to her because I said, I have a friend who something similar happened to. And, I just was not prepared to talk about my story. I just wanted to support her because of what I felt I saw. And I didn't like the fact that I didn't like what was going on back then. So
Understood.
I was just thinking I was doing the right thing.
Yeah. And so, apart from Virginia, you say another friend of yours was forced to have sex with Andrew?
Well, nothing happened to me. I just had a girlfriend during those years that she came to me really upset and said that Jeffrey had made her go into a room and have sex with someone that I thought was the prince. So that's the reason why I started speaking out, because of what I saw on the island with Virginia and also what my friend told me.
Lisa Phillips, thank you so much for talking to Newsnight again.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we asked Andrew Mountbatten Windsor for a response. We haven't heard back. He has previously denied all wrongdoing.
We're all back. Lisa, John Heilman, and I, we've been joined by our friend and colleague, senior White House reporter Vaughn Hilliard, who's just off the phone with the person we were just talking about, Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein. We just put up the meme that Mark Epstein sent to Jeffrey Epstein, a picture. Let me put it up one more time. This is Donald Trump's face, and it says, "Would you trust this man with your daughter?" There it is. You just spoke with the man who sent that meme to his brother. What did he say today?
Right. I'll actually be honest. I completely missed the segment because I was on the phone with him.
That's
and
good.
Just got up from off the street here. And I think we should be very clear here. Mark Epstein is somebody who has said that he is known for decades now that his brother had a deep, close friendship with with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. And he said, the way that he put it to me, when are people going to admit to themselves, this guy, President Trump, is so full of every time he opens his mouth. He says he wanted to
Starts
deny.
with an S-H?
It maybe does. He wanted to deny that he had a relationship or a friendship with Donald Trump. As Mark tells me, back in 1999, he was on the plane when they were having intimate conversation about women on a flight from Palm Beach, Florida, back up here to New York. He goes, he talked to his brother, somebody who he still cares deeply about even after his passing. And he says, at what point is there going to be a reckoning that Donald Trump just makes up stuff? And the number two part is that he's been very clear, this is outside the scope of what we're talking about today, but he wants a full investigation into the death of his brother, saying he doesn't believe anybody at this point anymore. He said he did sit down, he just told me, with the House Oversight Committee here this summer. I said, did they call and ask you to come in and speak? He goes, no, I requested to. And he said he went into detail with staff, trying to get them, to compel them to go even further beyond just the relationship between Donald Trump and other men that were a part of this cabal, and to really get at the fact of why did people want Jeffrey Epstein gone. This also goes to a conversation I had with Mark over the summer when he told me that Steve Bannon had 15 hours of footage of him interviewing Jeffrey Epstein. We have not seen that footage. And I think it's also worth noting that Michael Wolff has said that he has up to 100 hours of audio recordings with Jeffrey Epstein. We have not heard those audio recordings from either of the men. And that is what hits at the heart that Mark Epstein is so frustrated by, that the public, including him as the brother, do not have a full understanding of what the Department of Justice has, or frankly, what either of these two other men have.
I do not cover dead child sex traffickers often, so excuse this question if it's ignorant, but does Jeffrey Epstein's brother, Mark Epstein, believe the victims?
I don't have a direct answer to that. He is somebody that I should be clear, he just told me, I don't care about the Epstein files. I don't care about the nitty-gritty details. He goes, he wants them all released.
Okay.
He said, but
on the question of transparency, he's
correct.
an ally of the victim. Does he believe his brother was a monster?
Absolutely. He believes, he doesn't, how about this, Nicole? He doesn't want to get into those details. He truly says that he just cares about how his brother was killed. Again, on a very human level, to the extent that anybody can understand what it would be like to have somebody that trafficked children and young teenagers. I couldn't understand that, and I'm not going to be the one to put that on Mark Epstein, but he had a close relationship with his brother there, and he is on the side of having full transparency. And again, it hits at the heart where I think he so emphasizes that it was not just his brother. It was other people too. And I think that's where we come back to, whether it's Mark Epstein, whether it's the victims, whether it's members of Congress on Capitol Hill, from Marjorie Taylor Greene to Democrats. It is not just about Donald Trump. It is about them and all the other men that were a part of this being held to account. And that's why he wants the documents. And that's why he was so invested in his frustration that Donald Trump's denials are just at this point blasphemy, because it runs afoul of the lived experience that led his brother into jail for a life sentence, and then, as he says, his death.
Nicole, can I add to that for a second? Because Mark Epstein is not alone in his frustration. When you look at the files, and that's where I've spent most of my time today, that frustration is also palpable on behalf of other people who knew Jeffrey Epstein a whole lot less well than his brother. Landon Thomas, for example, the New York Times reporter, was the one who wrote that infamous 2002 profile of Jeffrey Epstein in New York Magazine, where Trump gave the quote that Jeffrey enjoys beautiful women, perhaps as much as I do, many of them on the younger side. That's a quote that we have talked about extensively ever since. And I'm reading right now in the files today an email exchange between Landon Thomas and Jeffrey Epstein, where he says, everybody and their mother is calling me because of that quote. And he says, you know, I'm serious, man. For the good of the nation, why not try to get some of this out there? I would not do it myself, but I would pass it on to a political reporter. And then Landon Thomas is showing Jeffrey Epstein another story from another publication in which Alan Garten, who was the general counsel of the Trump Organization, says Mr. Trump's only connection with Mr. Epstein was that Mr. Epstein was one of thousands of people who has visited Mar-a-Lago. That's it. Mr. Trump has never been accused of having any involvement or even having any knowledge of any of Mr. Epstein's conduct by anyone. What does Landon Thomas say to that? Look at these lies. And then Jeffrey Epstein responds with a picture, and he says, this is my 20-year-old girlfriend in 1993 that after 2 years, I gave to Donald. What kind of people talk about giving a person with whom they're in a romantic relationship to someone else? It's a very sick, perversely transactional way about talking about anyone, much less a young woman. I should note that the woman who's named here is also alleged to be the woman in the picture with the check that came out at the time of the birthday book. You'll recall that there's a picture of someone giving a check to someone else for $20,000. I believe the check is being written to Jeffrey Epstein from Donald Trump. And that woman, whose name I'm not going to disclose here, is apparently in that picture. Again, the transactional nature of the way they are bartering and exchanging women